Some of the forms of business organizations that had a big impact in the 1800s through 1920s were thus followed. Monopoly is the exclusive possession or control of the supply and trade in a commodity or service. One big example of this is in 1882 when the Central Pacific Railroad Company required all companies that want freight shipped by railroad for cheaper to sign a contract that says they will only use Pacific railroads to ship freight cross-country, which basically means they own the companies that sign, and if they used another means to ship cargo, they would be punished. The Central Pacific Railroad alone has brought in $34 million of dividend-paying stock through this monopoly alone. Conglomerate is a number of different things or parts that are put or grouped together to form a whole but remain distinct entities. This was showed when Pierpont Morgan, Thomas F. Ryan, and Levi P. Morton joined together in 1910 in New York in a trust company merger which united its resources of $150 million. Trust is confidence placed in a person by making that person the nominal owner of property to be held or used for the benefit of one or more others. This was shown when the Sherman Antitrust Act, passed in 1980, was the first important federal measure to limit the power of companies that controlled a high amount of market share. Pierpont Morgan, Thomas F. Ryan, and Levi P. Morton joined together in 1910 in New York in a trust company merger which united its resources of $15 million. A holding company is a company that owns other companies' stock. This appeared in 1909 when formation of a holding company took over the take 110,000 shares of the Boston and Maine stock held by John L. Billard of Meriden, Connecticut. The bill has the approval of not only the governor, but the New Haven and Boston and Maine railroad officials. In 1910, the efforts to make the bonds of the Boston Holding Company a legal investment for Massachusetts savings banks received another setback when Attorney General Malone reported that the bill exempting thesis bonds from taxation is unconstitutional. Conspicuous consumption is when people buy things to make themselves look good and or to try and reflect their wealth through the things they buy. Conspicuous consumption is a term introduced by the Norwegian-American economist and sociologist Thorstein Veblen on his book The Theory of the Leisure Class, published in 1899. The term refers to consumers who buy expensive items to display wealth and income rather than to cover real needs of the consumer. Laissez-faire is a doctrine that says the economic system should not be intervened by the government, and it is one of the guiding principles of capitalism. A laissez-faire economy would be one in which there would be no government involvement in the economy. In the 1800s, it was much easier to earn money than it is now. Not because there were easier jobs or because there were more high-paying jobs. It was because of laissez-faire. We still have laissez-faire technically today, but the economy is more strict than it was in the 1800s. There are laws now that do intervene with economy. For example, there is a law against how little a boss can pay his employees. However, these laws do not stop people from becoming rich or making money, so we are still a laissez-faire economy. Laissez-faire was less strict in the 1800s because it was a new concept and people did not know how it was going to affect the country. The more years passed, the economy became more strict as problems began popping up. Laissez-faire was based on the thought that people are more likely to do something and will be more inspired to do something that will benefit themselves. And when people are not interfered with in their business, a fair deal and fair business will be made that benefits more than one person. The purpose of philanthropy is to improve the well-being of humankind by preventing and solving social problems. Philanthropy and charity, though they both help people, they are not the same. Philanthropy solves social problems, whereas charity helps people with social problems get better. Philanthropy is not just a thing in America. References to philanthropy can be found in many other religions and cultures. Philanthropy in the United States was focused on religion and morality until the mid-19th century. In the 18th century, the American colonies experienced a social movement called the Great Awakening. The Great Awakening was fueled by religious revivals and focused on the importance of individualism in religion. In the 1800s, when big business became more popular and urbanization began and flourished, the usual ways of charity began getting replaced by ways of philanthropy. Philanthropy became a popular and socially acceptable activity, which led to the creation of hundreds of organizations. In American philanthropy, it became almost a tradition to give through associations. There were almost too many charitable organizations in big cities, and after some good communication, organizations began to grow bigger and better. There are entrepreneurs who are also philanthropists, like John D. Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie.
John Davison Rockefeller was born July 8, 1839. John D. Rockefeller was a man who was pursuing a big dream. His dream was to pursue black gold. Some even believed he was president because he was so rich and famous. John D. Rockefeller made money faster than any human. He was so rich that he could not count his money. They had to estimate his money. They concluded he had 35 million US dollars. When he discovered this black gold, he made all kinds of plants so he can suck the oil right out of the ground. It was also one of the biggest plants in the world. So John D. Rockefeller was one of the people that helped shape the 20th century. But unfortunately, he died May 2nd, 1937. Henry Ford was born July 30th, 1863. Henry Ford was the founder of the Ford Motor Company. That is why today you can look outside and see his name still implanted on the front of cars and trucks. Henry Ford made not as expensive cars so that middle-class people could afford these cars. Then he introduced the Model T car. This changed the transportation of the 20th century. Henry became one of the richest people and helped shape the landscape of the 20th century. Henry Ford is worth about $188.1 billion. Henry Ford also permanently kept his company to his family, so Henry Ford will forever be owned by him and his family. But it all came to an end when Henry Ford died on April 7th, 1947. Andrew Carnegie was born November 25th, 1835. Andrew Carnegie was the first two-man of steel. Andrew was a hard-working man at a young age. Andrew knew the railroads were expanding to the west, so he made his own company that made iron. Then he made a formula that could change history called steel. When making this, he realized that steel was much stronger. Carnegie Steel was the foundation of American railways. He even helped build the Brooklyn Bridge and other bridges as well. Andrew Carnegie was worth 310 billion US dollars. But Andrew Carnegie was a very mean man. He made people work hard and with no breaks. But unfortunately, he died at 83 years old on August. Jay Gould was born on May 27, 1836. Jay Gould was a railroad developer. He became a stockbroker on Wall Street. Jay Gould was a man whose success came from business, and that made him the 9th richest U.S. citizen at that time. In 1859, Gould investing by buying stocks in small railways. He even got control of 4 western railroads, which included the Union Pacific, but it all came to an end in December 2nd, 1892 at age 56. J.P. Morgan was born April 17, 1837. J.P. Morgan was a financier, banker, and art collector. J.P. Company was one of the most powerful ranking banking houses in the world. In fact, his company was so powerful that the government looked to him for money in gold. He even helped the government with the Depression of 1895, but he died in March 31st, 1913.